All of them are settled down, maybe and get going.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, Professor.
Yes, good afternoon.
I think your voice is muted there.
Okay, am I audible?
Good afternoon, sir.
I hope we should be audible. Just check. Am I audible, sir? Not.
Hello.
You're connected there? No.
Hello, sir.
Afternoon.
You can just leave once and then rejoin.
Manoj, any issues? Technical? Should I join through any other source?
Mic is switched off, sir.
Please be safe.
Is okay? Yes.
Am I audible, sir, now?
Yeah. Am I audible now to you?
Yes.
Yeah. Good afternoon to
good.
both of you.
Yes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, just 2 minutes, sir. Once they settle down, we can get started.
Oh, yes.
But Manoj, hope all connectivity is fine. We are good to go. Manoj? Okay, okay. Thank you. So, a very warm welcome to all the participants, our cohort of participants, both online and offline, who have tuned in today. A very warm welcome to all of you on behalf of the State Bank Institute of Leadership. This is Professor Krishna Kumar, Dean from SBIL here. And we are actually physically airing this particular program from SBIL campus, Kolkata. But we also know that we have shared the link to a lot of banks, and we are running this program in association with SIDBI. I'm sure there will be a lot of participants who are joining from SIDBI also, and also the cohort of participants, our alumni who have attended a lot of programs in the earlier circumstances at SBI. A warm welcome to all of you. So today we are, going to have, we have taken up a very, very important theme, the theme of sustainability, a preferred choice or Hobson's choice. So that is the theme of the discussion today. To kick the ball rolling, I would request, our director to welcome the gathering. Mr. Bangaraju is a very seasoned banker. He was in currently the director. Earlier, he has held a lot of portfolios as DGM, B&O, and other portfolios. So I would request Mr. Bangaraju to welcome the gathering. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Krishna Kumar. Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone. I extend a warm welcome to all the participants in this forum, actually. Those who logged in through online, and also those who are present actually physically here, and personally the people who are sitting there. It's a great privilege for me as the director of SBIL to extend a warm welcome to you all to this Fireside Chat on sustainability. Sustainability is a term that has been used so frequently in the recent years. But what does it really mean? At its core, sustainability is about meeting the needs of the present generation without jeopardizing the interests and the needs of the future generation. It is nothing but balancing economic, social, and environmental concerns to create a better world for the posterity. But is sustainability really a choice? Or is it something that we must embrace if we want to ensure the survival of our planet and the species? I can say with conviction that costs of ignoring sustainability are enormous. We are already experiencing climate change, resource depletion, and social inequality are just some of the challenges that we'll be facing if we do not change our current path. By choosing sustainable practices, we create a better and more prosperous world for tomorrow. It helps us to ensure inclusivity and equitable society and more resilient system. Today, global activism is also exerting a lot of pressure and influence on corporates to integrate sustainability in their business processes. ESG has become almost an integral part of the corporate policies today. Sustainability has become so core to the businesses that we often hear business and sustainability are so intertwined. Sustainability is business and business is sustainability. Against this backdrop, we are so happy to organize this Fireside Chat in association with the SIDBI to deliberate on this crucial topic, sustainability, a preferred choice or a Hobson's choice, with an eminent speaker, Ms. Madhura Mitra, Executive Director, Sustainability and Climate Change Practices, PricewaterhouseCoopers. Welcome, madam. Thank you very much for consenting to speak at this forum and sharing your thoughts. And I compliment Dr. Krishna Kumar, the Dean SBIL, for bringing in such an eminent personality today to share her views. And he will be moderating this discussion. I'm sure that the insights from this discussion will be highly engrossing and enlightening to all of us. Once again, I welcome to you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Bangaraju, and all the participants will just keep going. And I would request Dr. Vijay to formally introduce the profile of the panelists here, the eminent experts, so that it is known to all of them, including both who are present online as well as offline. I hope I'm audible. I don't think this.
You are audible clearly.
But I'm just wondering whether this is serving any purpose. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Please.
It is my distinct privilege to introduce Ms. Madhura Mitra, Executive Director, Sustainability and Climate Change, PricewaterhouseCoopers Private Limited. Ms. Madhura is an Executive Director with the Sustainability and Climate Change practice of PricewaterhouseCoopers Private Limited, India, with more than 15 years of experience in the following areas. Number one, climate policy, climate change mitigation, adaptation, and resilience, covering country level NDC and NAP. Number two, net zero decarbonization strategy for corporates. Number three, carbon markets and other carbon pricing instruments. Number four, carbon inventory and target setting. That is scope number 1, 2, and 3, which I'm going to read now. Then stakeholder engagement and capacity building and climate disclosures. Ms. Madhura has advised ministries, multilateral agencies, large public sector undertakings, and corporate majors in India and other developing and least developed countries, including Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, Mauritius, Eswatini, Pacific Island countries like Kiribati, Tonga, and others, Lebanon, Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and India. She has recently assisted several large Indian conglomerates, including Aditya Birla, Vedanta, Tata, in their decarbonization standards and roadmap design covering science-based targets and net zero strategies. Welcome, ma'am. I will again take this opportunity to introduce Professor N. Krishna Kumar, Dean, State Bank Institute of Leadership, Kolkata. Professor Kumar is a top bank executive turned academician and leadership trainer. In this progressive banking career spanning nearly 2 decades, he has worked with the foreign banks, 2 nationalized banks, and a private bank, and headed risk management and treasury functions of banks. As an academician, he has held academic leadership positions for more than 10 years and held directorship, deanship in 3 different institutions, and has served as chairman and member of board of studies and academic councils. He has also headed the business incubator in a university and is a prolific speaker, consultant, researcher, and mentor in BFSI ecosystem. He has earned doctorate degree in financial risk management from Central University, Aligarh in the year 2005. He has won many awards and recognitions, including as Best Professor, Best Paper Researcher Presenter, Best Dean and Director. He is presently the Dean and Head of Academics at State Bank Institute of Leadership, Kolkata, which is an integral part of State Bank of India, which is an apex training institute of SBI, exclusively in the space of BFSI leadership in India and beyond. I welcome you, sir. Now you can take over from this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Vijay. And thank you all the participants who tuned in. So without wasting much time, we'll, I think, get going into the Fireside Chat. Thank you, ma'am, for agreeing to come on board and host this particular, to be a panelist in this particular Fireside Chat. We all know, in fact, when we ideated, when I was ideating this particular theme, how to caption the theme, it came to me that the sustainability is a preferred choice or a Hobson's choice. Maybe I need to spend 1 or 2 minutes explaining that. So, what is, Hobson's choice is a word we use in English phrase, It is said, people who may not know about it, it is said that, there used to be a guy by name Thomas Hobson. I need to take you back to the 17th century or so. in UK. So he was a stablery owner. He was running a stable, which means where the horses are, kept and taken care of. So stable. So stable, Larry, what happened? He started, those time, I'm talking about 17th century, a lot of war and other things. There was no mechanized form of commuting and all. So he's in any case feeding all this stable, a lot of horses. So what do they do? So you notice that a lot of students have got a lot of interest to, you need to walk. The only other option is to walk. So you can hire, these guys come and many of them obviously that time were knowing horse riding, and so they wanted to ride horses. Okay, so they asked, in any case, all this stable is park, why don't you hire it out? So he noticed that there's a good business, so he started hiring the horses for these students, especially those who are enrolled into Cambridge and such kind of universities, and they go and come back. So it so happened that many a time he noticed that these students don't return their stable properly. Horses sometimes they return, acha nahi hai, wo acha nahi hai, wo stable chahiye, like that. So after getting a bit more experience, a few months, so the story goes that he started telling, no, what is there in the gate of the stable, that is the one you will take. He started rather dictating terms. So it came to be a phrase called, you don't have a choice, Hobson has a choice. So it is actually Hobson choice means you don't have a choice. Okay, so it is a no choice kind of situation. You take it or leave it. So when we talk about sustainability as a debate, or sustainability as a very important element in the way we live, in the way we do business, in the way we transact, in the way we trade, and all those commute, and you go on, list goes on, right? So somewhere along it goes to prove, and the way the nature is backlashing against us. It is kind of a one-way road. It is going to be a kind of is it going to be a kind of a no choice situation? So is what we are trying to prognose and understand. And I would really want ma'am to throw more light on it. That is how the whole theme is coming. Sustainability, a preferred choice or a Hobson's choice. In short, meaning no choice. Okay, so the whole explanation boils down to that. Okay, now coming to our subject proper, when we say that, we all know that we are having extraordinary situations of climate change. When weeks back in Himachal, we had a big backlash. Himachal government went to the extent of telling, don't visit us. So look at, the kind of situation we are leading to. We all know that the recent, our COP27 got over. COP28 is being talked about. The Bonn Climate Change Accord. It's kind of a poly crisis when you look at the digitalization on the one side, the climate change and those kind of disruptions on the other side. But it is suffice to also say that when the world is trying to do a better place to live through sustainable development goals and other things. Incidentally, the Sustainable Development Goal Report 2023 has also come recently, and India's record hasn't been much. So is the case with a lot of other South Asian countries or Southeast Asian countries, be it Bangladesh, be it Bhutan, Nepal, all of them. Maybe though it's only changes only in degrees. So where are we placed now? And when we go about the priorities and the kind of climate change risks that are panning out, and when we are marking it against the goal of SDG, where are we placed now? And as an expert in from this, how do you see it?
Yeah, I don't think this is working though.
Please take this.
Yeah. Am I audible to all of you?
Now it's switched off. You switch. Yeah. Now.
Now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I will kind of continue from the last session because many of you are from the last session. But two things, before I come to this particular answering this particular question, like how do we equate, SDGs and the climate crisis, and where do we stand as a country? One thing, the statistics that I shared with you in session 1, that is our water demand will be, or sorry, our water supply will be 50% less than our water demand by 2030. This is a very alarming statistics, And a few days back, my son is 7 years old. I'm mother to a 7-year-old kid. So he was asking me, you take care of me. Now I'm 7 years old. Who will take care of me when I'll be 70 years old? He was just asking me. Quite a philosophical question, but that kind of triggered this question. I'm talking about 2030. 2030, he will be 14 years old. And there, the supply of water will fall short by 50% of the demand. Such is the situation in our country, and he's talking about when he will be 70. So it's not only as a professional I am alarmed, I'm also alarmed as a mother. How do we make sure that our future generation, we do something to secure the lives of our future generation? So, and this is what is sustainable development. Like we do development in a manner so that we secure the future and the development and the health and happiness of our future generations. So that is why sustainability is so very important for us. Whether it's a choice among multiple options or one choice, if I have to give a good life to my son, as a mother, I need to do something about climate change. So that is the most important thing for me as a human being as well, So that is the first thing. Now coming to his question, and also to share some of the other statistics and for climate risk. There is a flood called 100-year flood. So there are floods, we talk about, there was a flood. So there are floods that occur on a regular basis. There are floods which are called 50-year flood. A flood which is a 50-year flood is supposed to happen every 50 years. And that flood is more intense than a flood that occurs, on a daily basis, on a monsoon-wise basis. Then there are floods which are 100-year floods, a flood that is supposed to occur every 100 years. So rarer the floods are, the intensity would be much more. That is the idea. Now in Kerala, you are from Kerala, you have seen floods are coming back every alternate year. These are 100-year floods that are coming back every alternate year. Imagine the rise in the frequency of floods. A 100-year flood is happening every alternate year. So definitely, the climate risk is felt. Climate risk is not something that will happen in the future. Because everyone, when we talk about it, the problem of data in our country, in every country, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, have worked in. The problem with the data is, if you look at the data, the temperature data and the rainfall data, you will see, okay, today is the hottest day of this year, but 30 years back, there was such a hottest day. Every day, if you look at the newspaper, they will try to equate that particular day of the year with some other year in the past. That creates confusion. That creates confusion because now those hotter days have increased in number. There might be one such hot day 30 years back. That doesn't say that in these 30 years nothing has changed. So such misreporting and such anomalous data has led to a lot of confusions. And we think, as general population, the climate change is an issue of the future. We don't have to worry about it. We are sitting in an AC room. The heat and the outer world is not affecting us. Why should we think about it? But if we don't think about it, I do not know what will happen when my son becomes 70 years old. Whether at all we will grow and become 70 years old, that also we do not know, right? So that is why it's very important that we think about our future now. And we need to realize that it has happened now. It's already happening. In Kerala, what is happening is not a common flood. It's not a common phenomenon. And that's why you see such huge losses and damages. Think about a company who is deciding to invest in Kerala. And tomorrow this flood happens, what happens to your investments in Kerala then? So we are all part of the same ecosystem. You might be doing banking, I might be doing consulting, someone else might be just talking about manufacturing. but we are all linked to each other. We cannot segregate ourselves and say, no. We are bankers, we do not have to do anything. So it's just like this. Because the problem of banks is that your exposure is through your portfolio. It's just not your operations in terms of signing a loan agreement, but it's the portfolio you will be exposed through. So to answer your question, climate risk is there. And even if I look at just the statistics, if you look at the last 2-3 years global climate risk report, an index comes out every year. India is somewhere around 7, 8, 9. India's ranking is varying, in 7, 8, 9. High risk. Out of so many countries, 198 countries, we are up there, 7th, 8th, 9th. We are moving, we are kind of vacillating between 7 and 9. So you can understand that we are a very, very risk-prone country. Why? Because we have a very long coastal line, which is true for many of the Southeast Asian countries also. And that is why, the coastal belt, is prone to cyclones and all. And those which are not in the coastal line, there, the mountainous region, again, he talked about Himachal. There, what is increasing? Landslides and flash floods. Where in the coastal areas, it is floods. In the mountainous region, it is landslide and flash floods. It is happening, as I was telling you in the last session also, because our soil is becoming very, very porous. All the water vapors are moving, kind of coming out because of the heat. And so these lands are becoming the soil is becoming very porous and is unable to kind of hold back. And that is why you see land erosion and landslides. So, and flash floods. Flash floods because of sudden accumulation of water vapor in the atmosphere. So there is a science behind this. We need to understand the science, and then we have to understand why there is an incremental frequency. So we are a very, very high risk country. How do we then merge SDG, our developmental goals, with climate risk? How do we do that? There are two ways to do that. One of the ways is to naturally understand we cannot develop if there are so many damages, if there is such a huge asset loss, if we lose, because of floods and hazards, if we lose assets and lives, development cannot happen. That is one way of looking at it. That's the negative way of looking at it. What is the positive way of looking at it? If we can involve the community to build a more adaptive society, wherever there is an erosion of soil, if we can go for nature-based solutions to keep the soil together, the soil particles together through nature-based solutions like forestation, through nature-based solutions like bunds, if you come up with check dams and all, where you can store water and you can also build the soil together. So if we do these, what happens is you involve the community at large, you involve the society at large, and you build a more adaptive society. And this is and that will make your ecosystem more resilient to climate change impacts. So there are two ways of looking at it, that there is a risk which is affecting our SDG goals, adapt in a manner which will improve our SDG goals. Many of the adaptation projects, there is a term called adaptation, because I'm using the term. So there are two terms we need to keep in mind. One is mitigation, another is adaptation. When we talk about mitigation, we mean mitigation of greenhouse gases. I talked about CO2, methane, and all of that. Whenever we are trying to do something to mitigate such emissions, we call them mitigation. By how? Either we go and install more renewable energy, or we plant more trees. So these are mitigation. Or we try to go for technologies like all these are, if you look at the HV, the ACs here in this room, they are very highly rated air conditioners, which means it will consume lesser energy compared to a normal AC. These panels, AC panels and all. So if you go for this will also reduce your greenhouse gas emissions. So these are mitigation actions that we are taking as an organization or as a society. The other one is, and also mitigation, another good example is, say for example, we all know in agriculture, in agricultural practices, we use fertilizers, nitrogen-based fertilizers and all. So if you move away from nitrogen-based fertilizers to natural fertilizers, like biogas and all, biomanure and all, what happens is that is also a mitigation, because that will also reduce your methane emission, CH4 emission. If we do all these, that will also involve the community. It will generate many more job opportunities. So it is meeting an SDG goal. At the same time, it is mitigating. The other term is adaptation. Whenever there is a, say, for example, if there is a drought situation, you go and create bunds, bunds and dams and all. One good example is I was working in Madhya Pradesh. You know, in Madhya Pradesh, in central part of India, what happens is there are two kinds of soil there. One kind of soil which you can dig and create, dig up a pond to conserve water. Ponds will conserve water. Another kind of soil is which you cannot dig. You will try to dig, but you will not be able to create a hole there. So there, what we did was we divert the direction of the rivers and created small channels of river streams which will pass through those areas. This is called adaptation, because you are creating different channels of water either by digging ponds or by digging, diverting the roots of the rivers to solve the problem of drought. There, what you are doing is you are not trying to mitigate the problem, because you know that the problem is already there. You can't come out of the problem. So you are trying to adapt to that problem. So that is why it is adaptation. And here you are involving the community, to do all these things, digging ponds and diverting river. This will also help you address the SDG goals. So there are two ways of looking at it. Negative is we don't do anything, it affects our goals. We do something with the community, it helps meet our goals. At the same time, it will reduce the impacts. I'll stop here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am, for clarifying on the risk part as well as the adaptation and mitigant part. Yeah, we all know that when we are talking about business, the energy is a big component. And if you look at last 10 years of how we have consumed energy, I'm talking about the world across, statistics say that in the last 10 years, the energy use has gone up by about 41%. And all the reports also talks about use of about 47% of such energy generated comes from coal, and coal pollutes, as we all know. And it is all adding up to our greenhouse gas emissions, as well as the dependency on energy, though we would like to be otherwise in terms of a lot of other alternative and renewable sources and so on, isn't helping us much, or it is still, not at any desirable level. So, how do you see this? And we also in between talk about, when we talk about alternate, we talk about hydrogen as a sucker. We talk about solar. We talk about so many other, this one. So, how this energy transition debate or thing is leading us to? And we all know that the scope 1 emission, which is direct impact, as well as the scope 2, 3, now till scope 5, they say, right? So, where is this debate taking us? So, especially when we talk about energy, that is where much of the the bankers would also be committed much of their resources, be it power companies, generations, transmissions, and so on.
So yeah, I mean, like if you remember, there was a large debate on some power plants coming up in the Sundarbans region of Bangladesh, and some banks investing into such power plants. But let me tell you, in a coal-based economy like ours, I was even telling you in the last session that it's very difficult to come out of the coal. So, but then in coal also there is something called clean coal, right? I mean, like coal is also not always as polluting as it was 30 years back, right? So, for example, going for a conventional power plant vis-a-vis going for a supercritical power plant. So if we are investing in coal, let's invest in clean coal. That's very important, because the efficiency drastically differs from a conventional thermal power plant to a supercritical thermal power plant. So the objective is to, if we have to add coal capacity, which we have to add, at least in India, we must the way the energy demand is increasing, you cannot suffice that energy, incremental energy demand just by renewable energy or hydrogen. You can't. You can, of course, definitely a portion of it will come from all these alternate fuels, but coal has to be one of the primary sources at least till 2050. Or if not 2050, till 2045. If that has to happen, it has to be a cleaner form of coal. So that is why the objective is to see how we can phase out all the older thermal power plants and add capacity which is more technologically advanced. Such technologies which are coal-based technologies. So phasing out of older technologies, adding coal capacities which are based on, more efficient technologies, and also try to see how we can gradually increase the fuel mix in terms of all others, whether it's renewable energy, solar, whether it's renewable energy, wind, or is it a hybrid? Hybrid is a very interesting concept, hybrid of solar and wind. Because what happens is while solar is produced mostly in the daytime, wind will help us, produce power in the night time, right? So if you try and have a hybrid system where you have both solar and wind, most of these corporates, who are into manufacturing sector, because I was working with the Tata Group companies and Vedanta Group companies, they need round the clock power. So how do we produce round the clock power? Without coal. The other alternate is to see that if we can maximize our solar production in the daytime and wind production in the night. How it helps, it also reduces your battery load. We discussed battery. We know that battery will also create waste and all. So if you want to avoid the battery route, maximize the hybrid production of renewable energy. So that is the second option after coal. The third option is, even before we get into hydrogen, let's have battery-based renewable energy production. Battery-based renewable energy production, because that will also, when storage happens, then, things are even better. In a sense, the wind speed and all also varies. The moment you start storing, that makes your overall availability of power, even better than hybrid power. So that is the third option. But let us take our own time. You can't say that, okay, I'll bring hybrid in the next 2-3 years. Wait till 2030, see how the technology evolves, and bring battery-based technologies in our country. Once the battery-based renewable energy comes, when we have assured round-the-clock renewable energy power, move to hydrogen. Move to hydrogen, because green hydrogen is not possible unless and until you have assured renewable energy power. So it's all a phase-wise transition from coal to clean coal to renewable energy, standalone renewable energy, hybrid renewable energy, battery-based renewable energy, and then green hydrogen. And if you ask me what is the roadmap looking like, the pathway looking like, then it is definitely a 15-year pathway that we are looking at, which means, sometime around 2040, we will see such transitions start taking place. But while we have to start with the research and development now, you can't say, no, I'll just wait and watch. Who will wait and watch? Because that's a problem in the Indian corporates. I'm telling you, when we are having a discussion with Tata, they are saying, okay, I know, Alcoa is trying to do something in Canada. Okay, someone else is trying to do something in some other country. But why to wait? Research and development at least can start in our country. Why should we wait? Why the Indian companies will wait for someone else to do something in some other part of the world? They will not use it till it is commercialized. Why? You develop it, you bring it to the market. Why not, being the forerunner? So that is where all the technologies I have talked about, they requires an investment in research and development. We should not wait for someone else to do it and then a tested technology only we will buy. If we wait for the tested technology, then the time is short. So this is how, if you ask me, I look at energy transition. It's a gradual transition. It is not going to happen in one day, but R&D has to happen. There has to be more and more investment in research and development.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that part, the R&D, importance of R&D element, especially when you're talking about transition technologies. That also lead me to, looking at the sectors in the vanguard of making this change. You notice that some of the sectors like automobile and all are, trying to do, we were talking about EV transition. Of course, there is an ecosystem for EV to come in that is still we are struggling with it. Your charging stations and so on. So how are that is on the one side, and on the other side, we also know talking about R&D. Right now, we know that of the countries in the world, many countries are having facing a debt issue, and many of them are already in recession. So of the last count, about 53 countries are supposed to be either debt stricken or in recession of the 190 plus we are talking about. So how is it likely? I mean, I'm talking about as you correctly said, the R&D need to have investments. So unless otherwise you have such a long rope on R&D to do work on transition technologies, whichever be the sector. I just gave the citing of automobile and other things. It is true of textiles. It is true of every other industry for that matter. So how is this debt-stricken nature of countries and corporates are going to hamper our transition time frame? Will it delay, or how do you foresee as a consultant?
This is a very good question, and I feel it will actually delay. But at the same time, we need to understand that if we do not do anything, what happens? I was working with a Tata Group company, and what is happening there is, so what they do is they have one operation in the UK. Okay, in the UK, they have a very stringent regulation around carbon emission, and that is called emission trading scheme. So what they do is that they allow you to emit up till a certain limit. Okay, I'll come back to India, but let me first talk about UK. Will understand what I'm trying to say. So they allow you to emit up to a certain limit, and beyond that, whatever you emit, what you need to do is you need to buy certificates from the market to neutralize that emission. And every certificate is around 50, 50 pounds. Okay, 50 pounds per ton of CO2. Now, so they emit, and they one of their plants there, they exceed, by a very significant amount. And what is happening is, because it is such a huge pressure on both their operating margin and profit margin, they are thinking of wrapping up that business in the UK. Because they are saying it's impossible for me to, kind of every year withstand such a huge payout just in the name of carbon tax, and then sustain. Now, India tomorrow is going to come up with a carbon tax. The market that I was talking about in the other session, it will be in the form of an emission trading scheme in India, which is going to come in January 2024. So that will not leave any option, more like an Hobson's choice for the Indian industry, but to decarbonize. If you don't decarbonize, the situation is even more grave for us. Either you decarbonize or you pay out, and this is unlike any other tax which boils down to the consumers. It doesn't. It's a direct taxation, and it has to be paid by the investor, by the the industries, and hence it is a huge dip in their operating margin and profit margin. So it is very important for us to understand that that if you say that I am a debt-stricken industry, but like the paradox in our country is our country is debt-stricken, but the industrialists are not. To be honest, so if they say that we will also not invest, then that's a problem. We are not expecting the country to invest. We are expecting the private sector to invest. We are saying that the private sector must engage in climate action. If they don't engage in private sector in climate action, there is no hope. That is one part of it. So if you then compare the R&D investments with respect to the carbon tax, it is like this. If you don't invest, your investment is around, say, $30 per ton of CO2 that you emit, and your tax will be sometimes somewhere around upwards of $80 per ton of CO2. So which one will you choose? Will you choose $30 per ton of CO2 or $80 per ton of CO2? Obviously, you should go for $30 per ton of CO2. So that is the path we need to take, and we can take small steps. You don't have to invest all the money now, but you can start doing this $30 instead of waiting for you to pay $80 outside. So that is the equation that I am talking about. So I absolutely do not, as a professional, buy the logic of being a disciplined country, because private sector has their profit, and they can share a little bit of their profit in their R&D to make this happen. This is how, if you ask me, the business fraternity should look at it.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. And now talking about sustainability and all the debates, under circumstances, it is becoming very clear that businesses will be in future sustainability led. In short, it is going to be a sustainability led, we are veering towards that. And somewhere along, it is also getting integrated to, when we are talking about saving the planet Earth, it is also true that, the world has come into being of some 450 billion years ago. Maybe by the algae from the sea, they only, when plants were there in the planet 450 million years ago, maybe humans started living only a few million, maybe 10 million years ago or less than that. That's what science says. And that, if you look at further, come closer, it is only in the last 20 years that we noticed that the amount of emissions, that the CO2 part, the damage maximum was done in the last 20. Now, by looking at that debate and bringing in a thing called the behavioral part into it, how do you see that? Have we conducted ourselves as the people, as you were telling, like mother, when a kid asks such question, how short-termism we were running the show. And, is it there a kind of paradox and hypocrisy that is going with it in the way we have conducted? And suddenly we have sprang up and say that, it's all red flagged and then we need to do something about it. How do you see this whole thing? And now the whole question goes as far to say that I see a lot of economists writing that don't talk about growth, talk about sustainability. Even if it is degrowth and, you don't bother about it. So much so that there are a lot of votaries. We were talking about globalization at one time, now we talk about deglobalization. To that level, debate is gone far left, isn't it, from right? So how do we reconcile all this? And where is have our behavior been anything of a saner nature, if you look at?
No, I mean, it is true, like that we have always thought, because we didn't feel climate change, impacts on our daily lives, right? And as I said, if there is a hot day, everyone is too eager to point out 30 years back there was a similar hot day and all. So because of that, we always thought that climate impacts will always be a thing of the future. But when we have also moved, 30 years back, it was a thing of the future. But today it is not. It is a present day event for us. And that we do not understand. And we also thought that all the natural resources are available in abundance. There is no end to it. But there is an end to it, right? Into the land mass, into all the trees and all that we are cutting down, into all the ocean based resources. Everything has an end that we didn't realize. We thought only
finiteness.
The finiteness of our lives we realized, but we didn't realize that the earth itself is a finite resource. That we didn't realize. And because we didn't realize, we are facing the brunt of it. There is no escape from this. But at least today we need to realize that it is finite, and this is the time. Now is the time when we need to act upon it. There is a reason why investors like you are asking for climate related, KPIs from all your clients. There's a reason for that. We are not doing it without reason. So definitely we didn't realize. As a human race, we didn't realize. We can't blame each other. As a human race, we didn't realize. But now it is time to give back a little. It's not that whatever we have taken away, we can give back. At least some of them. The mangrove, because he talked about, ocean, mangrove, for example, all the encroachment that has happened, can we not give that back? Why do we need all those lands? We don't need all those lands which are there, right, beside the coastal line. Why do we need that land for our development? We don't need that land. Give it back to nature. The moment we give them back, we can save a lot of carbon. Why can't we do that? It's like if you plant a general tree here in the campus, it will give you 2 tons maximum per hectare, 2 tons, 2 to 3 tons. If you do a 1 hectare of mangrove plantation, it will give you 50 tons. So why don't we do that? We need to be a little more aware of what we can do. If we, one action leads to what kind of climate impacts, one particular action, we need to be aware, and we need to, act accordingly. Beautifying the campus is very, very important, but it's very important that we move out of our premises and go and see what's happening in the periphery. I remember doing a materiality assessment. This is a term that you will hear if you read any sustainability report. Once I was doing that for Jamshedpur, Tata Steel. And what we found out, we did a materiality assessment of all issues, environment, climate change, and this. We added one parameter called Peripheral Development of Jamshedpur. And most of the stakeholders voted for that. They said that because Tata is present within Jamshedpur, Jamshedpur looks fantastic. Okay. But the moment, if you just cross the border of Jamshedpur and go to the periphery, you will see a drastic difference in the living standard, in plantations, in water, in sanitation. So then the chairman said that I will pick this up as my next agenda, peripheral development of Jamshedpur, which was like moving out of your own boundary and doing something which is happening, beyond the premises of your business. It's very important that we go beyond the premises of our business. As bankers, you can go to the portfolio. As a manufacturer, they have to go to the community. Manufacturers, they forget that they work within a water basin. They draw water from the water basin. They survive because there are other people, maintaining the water index, maintaining the pollution index. But we don't go beyond the boundary. It's very important that we go beyond the boundary and start interacting. Then we will know what action we need to take. So it's just not only the future that we need to look at. We also need to look at beyond our own premises.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for clarifying. Yeah. Now, I thought I'm a bit more contextually closer to the what bankers do. We all know that bankers have to, now that there is even Reserve Bank discussion paper that has come out, which talks about factoring any of the sustainability related or climate risk related factors into the appraisals and maybe into the rating frameworks and so on. That is one part of it. Now, when you typically look at the bankers' function in the prism of sustainability-led initiatives, one part is they themselves being adopting, sustainability practices. The other part, which is maybe a more important part, is that they have a big stewardship responsibility. And that is what the regulator also talks about. The bankers being the, people who own the finances and then the financing power with them. So it is they who need to drive the stewardship responsibility of be it corporates or housing loan seekers or traders or whatever, or MSMEs and so on and so forth. into their production methods, into their way builder is building the building. And all these aspects have to come in. And somewhere along the stewardship responsibility of bankers, the way they're integrating into their day-to-day appraisals and so on, are going to be one of the most important things in the coming phase. We are actually in the precipice of it. RBI's discussion paper might get implemented any day. I'm sure all other regulators, be it Bhutan or Bangladesh or Indonesia, or, where we have participants from here in this cohort, would be really interested to know how these kind of stewardship responsibility is going to pan out. And as a consultant, as a person who has consulted a lot of governments, what is your take on that?
That's the most important part. I was showing some statistics in the other session. Sorry, I'm getting back to the other session. Sorry to all others who have joined this session. But what I showed in the other session was that, for a bank, the greenhouse gas emission, because we are talking about carbon and decarbonization and all, the greenhouse gas emissions portfolio looks like this. From a bank's own operation, it is around 3% of the total emissions that they are responsible for. The rest, 97%, comes from their investments. So it's very important. What do you do about the investment? They are a different company. Where you might have invested, you might have given a loan, but this 1% is 3%, 1% of direct emission from electricity, fuel burning and all. This you can do something. You can go for energy efficient lighting systems, you can go for energy efficient ACs and all of that. That's fine. But what happens to that 97% of the emissions that are happening outside the premises, that are happening in the portfolio? There, the most important part is stewardship, And I remember, and I was giving this example in the morning about Central Bank of Bangladesh. What happened was that they came up with this environmental and social risk management guideline that was adopted by all the nationalized banks in Bangladesh. They were apprehensive in the beginning. They were saying, just based on environmental performance, we can't say no to a client. Because if I say no, as Shonali Bank, if I say no to a bank, a client, someone else will come and, Rupali Bank will come and take that. So it's a business risk for us. We can't do. So what, this particular guidelines did was it created a level playing field for everyone. If I say no, you will also have to say no. Okay. So that's the level playing field. So that particular client will not get the loan from anyone. So that kind of an impetus or that kind of a drive is only possible when there is a policy around it. That's number one. Number two is, we said that we will not say no to anyone. We will just help them. We will put conditions and we will give, premiums and rebates and discounts in the overall interest rate and all. If they go for an environmentally, sustainable path. So that is what, this particular initiative, led to. What it did was, when we started off in 2003 and that kind of, about 10 years back, in Bangladesh, as you know, it's a hub of textile industries. They export, ready-made garment, units and all. The problem there was water pollution, because of all the dyes and all they used in the water, that came out as, as outgoing streams and effluents and all. And that created a massive pollution, issue there in Bangladesh. But surprisingly, and all these, someone asked me earlier that, all these units got environmental clearance. Even after environmental clearance, they were not being able to get any, the effluents were still coming out and polluting the nature. So what this particular, guideline did was, it said that if we are approving a loan, we will approve that with a condition that after 6 months, after the loan sanction, you must set up the effluent treatment plant. before the stream goes out of your premises. And because of this, over the next 1 decade, all the ready-made garment factories, at least the export-oriented ready-made garment factories, have an effluent treatment plant which is working, which is operating. So this is a transition in Bangladesh that was brought by the banking fraternity. It didn't happen because all the other regulatory measures, environmental regulatory measures were already there. This happened because bankers said we will invest only with this condition. Otherwise, we will not invest. So this brought a change. So definitely stewardship is important because, as I said, your exposure is not just within your own operation. It goes much beyond your own operation. Similarly, tomorrow, if the bankers start asking for the emissions data from all these clients, then you will see we will have a very good database of emissions. Currently, you go to the government, you go to Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Ask for the company-wise, sector-wise greenhouse gas data. Do they have it? They don't have it. But I can tell you, the moment you ask for those data as a part of your loan condition, you will get the data. So this is where stewardship from the bankers, comes into play. Because
as far as our country, whether it is possible, madam, because it's a Bangladesh, a small country, they will put all conditions stating that you have to install this much capacity as per your production capacity. We can tell in India whether it is possible, madam.
No, that's what ma'am is telling is right now it may be possible, but the days are not far. When the RBI mandation and other things come,
the government is mandating, sir. Government is mandating, and area-wise they are implementing very promptly. In, for example, in Tamil Nadu, in Sivakasi, there are cracker companies are there. Mandatorily, they used to if they want to start a company, this number of trees they have to plant, and it should be certified by the government official. Then only they will give the certificate. They are implementing, but in a large size, it is not implementing properly.
Because just to answer his question, so basically, if you ask me whether in India it is possible to monitor or implement, because one is there has to be a guideline first. That is not there. It is not there from the banking fraternity. There are many other guidelines, but banks are not asking for this as a guideline or a mandate. That's number one. Number two, the second part is whether once the guidelines are there, how do we monitor? Because we have such a huge portfolio, so many industries and all. You can monitor if you say, and you will see proactive reporting to you. If you say that if you do this, there will be a rebate in my interest rate. Then they will proactively submit. If you say, you just give me the report, I will not do anything, but I need your report. Then they will not submit your report. The third part is, how do we, implementation challenges. You ask them to plant trees. How do they plant trees? Where do they plant trees? There, definitely, it's important that the government and the bankers they work together.
Both should talk together.
Because you do not land is an issue in our country. You can't just say you go to this next land, someone will come say, no, this is my land. You cannot come here. So land-related issues need to be sorted in India. That's very important.
Thank you, ma'am. And to all the cohort of participants who are tuned in, through online and also offline, I'm going to ask the last question. After that, we're going to open for the entire Fireside Chat to the Q&A. You can directly ask questions. So I would suggest the participants who are tuned in online to put in their questions in the MS Teams chat box. So we will try to, at least some of the questions, we'll flag it to ma'am for answering. So I'm going ahead with my last questions, the last half an hour. The time is almost around 5 already. So the last half an hour we will spend on Q&A.
Sure.
Okay. So, well, now that we have tried to cover the banker's role, we have covered a lot of other substantive issues when you talk about sustainability-led part. It's also true that when we talk about sustainability, somewhere along we also talk about the circular economy principle. right? What we call the reduce, recycle, and reuse. Right? So we need to, as behaviorally, we need to reduce our use of whatever, be it petrol, be it kind of clothes that we wear, or wastage of food, whatever it is. And so reduce, recycle, preferably maximum possible, and then reuse. In fact, there are reports which say that India can benefit, add about 400 billion to the GDP terms when we are becoming a circular economy. So I'm sure that will be the case for all other countries also, because the companies bigger would be the benefit they derive from the circular economy principle. And naturally, it contributes to a lot of sustainability related measures also. So, how do you see this? As a consultant and as a practice, have you come across use cases where circular economy principle has driven economy?
Oh, absolutely. Circular economy is very, very important. We are talking, I was talking about, I think I should have also mentioned this, coal, if you have to replace coal, it's very important that we look at, residual heat, residual pressure that that is needed to recycle them back to the energy generation point. By that I mean there are many scraps that we generate. In even steel industry, for example, they generate several scrap material that have a heat value into it. So it's very important that we recycle them in a manner, and there are most of these industries, bigger industries, they have their recycling unit, to extract the residual heat from these scraps and use them as an energy input in their process. That is number one. Number two is waste heat in the all the emissions that are happening. The heat that remains in the gas that goes out of the chimney. We have all seen chimneys in thermal power plants and all. That is very important to trap all the outgoing streams, whether it's in gaseous form, in liquid form, in solid form. We must trap all the heat value that is remaining in those residues and use them as an energy input in our system. So that is the biggest energy saving opportunity for any industry. So circular economy, definitely, it's a new term. Earlier we used to call that waste to energy. Circular economy is a newly termed this thing phenomena, but the phenomena is not new. And I was doing a study with the Pollution Control Board. The jargon is, the action is not new. I was doing a study with the Central Pollution Control Board here in India. And what we were trying to understand, we were all talking about the problem of waste generation, right? If battery comes, what happens to the waste and all the hazardous waste that is there. We found out at least 80% of those hazardous wastes have a heat value in it. And you can send it back to different industries. Some of the of these chemicals can go to cement industry. Some of the chemicals can go to pharma industry. They cannot go to the same industry, and you can use all of them in different purposes. And you can have a circular economy where you have lesser waste lying there on the ground, lesser waste that you need to treat, and you can use this as a form of energy in your processes to replace coal, the primary energy source. So this is very important, and there are several scientific studies that are happening to find out the heat value in these. And in fact, for example, all these, some of the scrap materials can be used to extract precious metal like silver and gold and all of that, and that's a very, very important, profitable business. And quite a few companies are trying to set up their recycling units from scrap to precious metal. Scrap to precious metal. And where, I think, even the banking fraternity has a very important role to play to invest into such recycling facilities and see that we extract as much of heat as possible from these, recyclable scraps, and precious metal from these recyclable scraps. That's a very important, because that will improve our GDP the moment you generate such precious metal, and that will reduce the carbon pressure on the economy as a whole. So very, very important strategy is circular economy. That's how I look at it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am, for clarifying the dimensions of circular economy and how it's progress. So, friends, now we are open to take questions for both online and offline. So, if any one of you are interested to ask a question, just switch on from red to green, and then you can ask the question. All those who are joining here physically. Others, please put in your questions. We are requesting once again, please put in your question in the chat box. We will try taking it up with our speaker. Please.
Yeah, madam, can I ask a question?
Yeah, please. Who's that?
I'm Sanjay. Yes, sir. I am Sanjay Srivastava. I'm from SIDBI.
Please, sir.
Ma'am,
Can you show the thing? Take it. Tushar sir is bring the mic there, please.
no, it's okay.
Yeah.
Ma'am, as we have been discussing, India is a coal-rich country, and I don't know how far it is fair to ask a country to be kind of using less resource on which it has abundance. So I see that coal uses may not be really depleting, maybe by whatever time you said. But on the other hand, there are certain energy sources which we can deter the uses. For example, use of carbon-based fuels like oil and petroleum. On that count also, for example, if you take European countries, maybe, for example, Switzerland or even Germany, there are people, if you see their corridors, even small buses are running on electricity, right? Trams are running on electricity.
True.
So if we need to build that kind of infrastructure, and India being not so rich in electricity production, also there also we are struggling, but we have picked up a lot. But still, to cater to such kind of requirements could be difficult. So if you say that nuclear energy is not to be counted as part of renewable or green energy at this point of time, but if we can use nuclear energy to produce electricity, which in turn can actually reduce this kind of carbon emissions, then I believe the role of bigger nations who have a lot of hold on uranium and related products and its variants, and we're not really sure whether the uranium and related variants are being used for the best purpose in the world, right? So they also have some added responsibility to aid to such countries in the world that can help them reducing such a threat for the entire, humanity.
I tend to agree with you, but then at the same time, it's a policy decision, by the government. Mainly because if you look at the current mix, where we are using nuclear power as a source of energy, that mix has not grown significantly. And if you look at the total mix, it is less than 10% of our total mix of energy that we are using for the purpose of energy in our country. And for the mix to increase, you need to invest in, again, research and development and production of nuclear energy, which currently, India has halted that progress. Why it has halted? Because of several intergovernmental, international, negotiations. So even if for nuclear to happen, it will take some time for India. While I do agree that has the potential, then you may not need hydrogen also, because for hydrogen also you need to depend on renewable, and renewable is uncertain, all that. But even from the from the current mix to the kind of mix we need for nuclear energy to sustain, it's the kind of research and development that has to go into it that is not happening in India as of now. For various reasons, India has stopped investing into such research. So that is why it is not an option for the next 10 years to 20 years. Because of the past, because of the past scrutiny that we had to undergo and many other things, India has taken a call that we will not, proceed on that area, proceed on those lines. So it's very difficult now to start and bridge the gap. So that is why circular economy principles, and in fact, I thought I forgot to mention the role of biomass residues. Biomass residue is a natural residue. And if you go to any rural part of India, you will see in the evening time, there is a lot of smoke. You will not be able to breathe properly. You will not be able to see properly. It happens because of, burning of all those stubble and biomass residues. But if you can aggregate all those biomass residues and channelize them to different manufacturers, you can actually replace around 30% of coal just by the biomass residues that you are just burning. You are burning and creating a health hazard. So what I'm trying to say, let's explore more, softer options which are there, which we can see but we are ignoring, and then go to more, technologically advanced, options. And this is very much in line with circular economy. Nuclear will take time, because we have already deferred, we have already halted the progress. Now the timelines that we have, we cannot bring nuclear suddenly.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah,
I have a query.
please.
Nepal context,
Can you switch on that mic, sir? Are you liking it? Yeah. That, make it green. Side up.
okay, thank you. I think in early 2018, the Central Bank of Nepal came up with a policy, guideline
Right.
on environmental issues,
Right. Yes.
mandating the banks to compulsorily have a due diligence on environment and social issues before lending or making a large lending portfolio or lending or any project. But it seems that the things are being, things are going very traditional way. Banks are doing it just for the sake of doing it.
True.
And like you already mentioned it, if my bank does not do it, his bank does it. So if his bank does it, why don't I do it? So that concept is, that trend is going on. So what do you think, ma'am, should the bank, and one more thing, I think this is happening because the banks are less educated, bankers are less educated about the environment, right? For example, you are here giving us the presentation on environmental issues, and we have very less queries to ask, right? Because we are not properly educated, we are not properly learned on this. So don't you think these environmental issues and social issues should be well educated from the school levels, so that it will be well imbibed into even in the banking fraternity?
No,
Absolutely. It should go uh, in the future.
Awareness part.
Awareness is very, very important. And it actually, I remember having a course on environmental science in college, but that was just what is a tree and what is this thing, like very, very, basic course was there. So I don't think we deal with all the, technological, economic and societal issues of climate and environment in school and college. We don't. So that is very, very important to generate awareness from, so that you can also choose your career in that manner. That's very important. But I think the moment you become a banker, or I become an engineer, or someone else becomes something else, it's very important that even in our organization, we should have such capacity building courses. And in banks, for example, in Bangladesh Bank, we created a climate change team. The Central Bank of Bangladesh has a climate change cell. where there are people who are experts from the climate change field, from the circular economy field. So then what happens is now you're coming to SBIL and getting trying to understand, okay, so many terminologies just from one session maybe. But similar sessions, if you get a chance to, chance in Nepal itself, so that there is an expert in your organization itself who you can approach whenever you have a query. So that is like institutional strengthening or mainstreaming of environment and climate change into your own institution. That can only happen when an expert sits there in your organization talking about these things. Otherwise, what happens is once in a year you can hear an expert talking about it. You might remember it, you might forget it as well. So then it becomes a daily job. You go back to your day-to-day work and you might forget. So that is why it's very important that we do institutional strengthening and we create climate change teams within the organization and we hire experts on the subject. So that's also very important. Otherwise, it's just a procedure.
So, ma'am, there's one more question, maybe very aligned to it. So this question has come online. This gentleman is asking, I'm from a bank in Nepal. In Nepal, the central bank has issued a directive relating to ESG management, but the implementation side, the private sector is reluctant. More so because they seek immediate benefits. Two, Nepal as a country has made very little impact to the environment. First, let the developed countries take care of major impacts they are making. And finally, the regulator, major stakeholders are not conducting stringent monitoring. Equally important, the country doesn't have modalities and tools to monitor environmental impact and management strategies. Take, for example, carbon emission factors for Nepal. How have an effective beginning in this journey of sustainability?
Now, that's a very important question. I can tell you only one thing. I talked about two things in the beginning. One is mitigation of carbon emissions, and then there is adaptation to climate change impacts that we can already see. So now for countries like Nepal and Bhutan, the logic is that we are not impacting that much. We already have a hydropower base. We are not emitting that much. So why should we take climate action? Then don't mitigate. Why don't you start adapting? Adaptation is also a huge task. That also requires a lot of investments. That also requires newer technologies. Because in Nepal, there is I was working with Confederation of Nepalese Industries, CNI, and Chaudhary Group. At this point in time, we'll publish a report in the month of November there, just before the conference of parties. I work with Nirvan Chaudhary and all, in Nepal. So there, what we are seeing is incremental hazards and the asset damage that these hazards have caused in the last 10 years. We have made a statistics of that there, and that is alarming. So why don't we adapt? Why are we bothered about emission factor in Nepal? Emission factor will be low. Don't account for your greenhouse gases, but be resilient enough so that tomorrow, if there is a flash flood, tomorrow, if there is a landslide, there is no asset damage. Chaudhary Group's hydropower project has undergone severe damages just because of landslides, and those are climate-induced landslides. Yeah, flash flood happens because the landslides, because the flood comes down as a flash. So it is happening because of that. So how are we? What are we doing to make our system more resilient to these hazards, so that no other hydropower projects get affected? So if you ask me, in Nepal and in Bhutan, the focus should be adaptation. That is the starting point. Then you move to mitigation. So we need to prioritize, just by looking at what's happening around us. Then we have to take a call.
Yeah, please.
Point is, we are the banks, just the profit-making organizations. And the issue is policy to be addressed by making and issuing policies. And the concerned government ministries, for example, Ministry of Finance or Environment or like that, and the central bank. If we want to make the banks in this issue, they should do something. We have to prepare the policies before that. And for preparing the policies, central bank
Has to
maybe motivated, and you should focus to tell them or to discuss with the central bank or the regulating body of the banks.
I totally agree with you.
Yes.
This is the process. There has to be a policy, and then only you can follow the policy. Other things will fall into place. We are trying our best, but finally it's their decision to take.
True. I mean, that's what we were discussing, right? Sooner or later, many of these policies are going to be in place. Almost, see, for example, bigger countries, it's already there. And slowly, it is even in RBI has already issued a discussion paper on it. It's only a matter of time, as far as India is concerned. So, I mean, in other countries also, we are going down the path, same path. So, sooner than later, we'll be able to see that happening. Yes. Any other questions? Please switch on and ask. Yes. One of you can give the
Ma'am,
mic from my mic.
Yes, as rightfully mentioned by you in the morning, we are a carbon negative country, of course. One thing that this is a more of a general question, not since as you as the climate guru, we talk of global warming, which has been quite a common thing over the last 5 to 7 years. Initially, I understood this global warming as, well, it's all about energy, and I'm also a science student, so I believe that energy in the whole universe does not change. Energy loss if you do energy gain. From that concept, initially, in a place where I come from, Bhutan, we are normally cold. So in winters, it would get to as low as even -5, -6. 5, 6 years back, when we started feeling a bit hotter in summer, and by that it definitely means a lot more colder than what it says, about 26, 27 degrees. We said it's because of global warming. Now my question is, and then the name itself, the global warming, so we always tend to believe that in general, the universe, the world is getting warmer and warmer, and that's what you explained a bit of this in the morning where glaciers are melting. But then of late, in the last 2, 3 years, we also saw our winters getting a little bit colder. And as I told just minutes back, being a science student, I tend to relate that energy lost is equal to, in this case, heat is equal to cold. I'm not sure if global warming means getting warmer year by year, or in general, whether in some places it's getting warmer and in some places it's getting colder. So I ask this climate because you're related to climate.
Right.
Thank you, ma'am.
No, thanks. That's a very good. So it's the thing is, it is the erratic distribution of water vapor because when you are not anticipating so much of heat, there is heat, right? That's global warming, and because of that, the load of water vapor in the atmosphere is very erratic. It's distributed in an erratic manner. So what happens because of that is when there's another terminology called global cooling as well. So there are two terminologies to be clear. Global cooling is the other side of the coin of global warming. It is erratic distribution of water vapor in the atmosphere, and that is why you are capturing heat in certain places more than you need, and you are releasing the heat in another place more than you need to release. So, because there is an erratic rise of temperature in certain areas, the water vapor gets accumulated in the atmosphere. So that hydrogeology of water is either in the form of more flooding and precipitation. It manifests. In certain cases, it is because of that it tries to capture more heat from the nature. So that is why it is cooling also happens as another outcome of global warming. So it is the erratic distribution of water vapor across the globe that is releasing more heat when it is not needed, and that is capturing more heat when it is not needed. And it is bursting as in the form of precipitation when you are not expecting such precipitation. So these are the three phenomena that is happening, mainly because there is an erratic what should I say, circulation of heat in the atmosphere in certain places because of erratic temperature rise. That is one part of it. The other part of it is your soil. The soil structure is breaking down because the water vapor, you have more water vapor in the atmosphere. So it is taking out the water vapor from soil, and hence what is happening is the soil is dispersed. That is not the reason for global cooling, but it is the reason for landslides. It is the reason for flash floods. So the main phenomena of global warming or the main phenomena of climate change is temperature rise, because an erratic temperature rise. It's not, if you look at, say, the central part of India, their temperature rise is much more than the eastern part of India, right? So it is not only a temperature rise, but an erratic temperature rise. And because of such erratic temperature rise, there is an erratic distribution of water vapor in the atmosphere. And because of such erratic distribution of water vapor, you see in certain cases it's warming the atmosphere, in certain cases it is kind of extracting the heat from the atmosphere to sustain the vapors. And then that will sustain the vapor, and at one fine morning you will see in the there is a flood. There is a flood when you are not expecting a flood. There is a precipitation. Why? Because it has taken up all the heat and it has grown in size, the vapor, and now it is pouring. So if we understand the erratic distribution of temperature, global warming and global cooling is just the two sides of the same coin. That is how it is happening.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am, clarifying. And I see a hand raised by Mr. Alok Bhushan. If you can unmute and ask the question online.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, ma'am.
Please.
Am I audible?
Yes. Go ahead.
My question is, like ma'am said, that of course there is a competition amongst the bankers to give a loan or advance for any unit. So X bank will say, okay, I am going ahead. The Y bank will say, no, we can't do that because we are a climate conscious bank. But my point is that if I have two experiences. Number one, like tanneries, they generate quite lots of pollutants, which they easily pass it on the river Ganga. So if that is the case, and the pollution control board and the local district industry center, why don't they keep that it's debarred them or a red flag like the brick-kilns fact where debarred earlier, now it's also there. Certain districts are not allowed to have a brick-kiln factory. But in the same case, we can do for the trannies, for they are generating lot of pollutants. Everybody knows that. So what does the state government or the local authorities do? They shift the industry from one district to the another district, where maybe the norms may not be so stringent. Number one. Number two, when last year we had an exercise carried on the climate data, pollution data, emission norms, we were supposed to collect from the thermal power stations. So when we approached them, Power Gencos, they said we have already submitted all the data to the local pollution control board, central government, and also the state government pollution control boards. So every data is there, and we have got a NOC. So why you are asking for the same? You should go by the state government and the central government pollution control board norms. That's all. So where are we now then? Where do we stand now?
So, so first of all, your first question, why can't state pollution control boards take action? Why can't they debar these industries? They are trying hard. I'll tell you. If you put them, where do they get their powers from? They get their powers from an act called Environment Protection Act of 1982, right? If you look at the clause, penalty clause, that is section 15 of Environment Protection Act, that says if a company or an industry does not follow the environmental norms, they pay a penalty of 1 lakh and the imprisonment is up to 1 year. Think of an Adani or this thing, and it is nothing for them. How will you enforce an act? How will the state pollution control boards enforce an act if the act is so, it's so soft, right? So one lakh of penalty and 1 year of imprisonment, it is nothing for them, you understand. So there is no enforcement of such act, and that is why pollution control boards, they just get the data, they keep the data with them, and they can't do anything about it. You might have seen some of the judgments that came out from Supreme Court, 2 3 years back. Yeah. Even for this one, the Bhopal gas tragedy, when did you get the judgment? You got the judgment like 20 years down the line. Now the thing is, but that was such a big tragedy. Now coming to this fact, we actually, this is something that we try to do. Indian government also tried to bring in certain changes. In the US, they have something called US Environment Protection Agency. They say, if you are polluting, if you are not cleaning it, cleanup of a polluted site actually costs you around 50 crores of Indian rupees. They say that you either clean up, okay, else you pay 3 times to the US government. Either you pay 50 crores or you pay 150 crores. That is an enforceable law. If the law says only 1 lakh of rupees, then no one will care. So that is why they are just accumulating data, not doing anything about it, because no one is listening to them. Okay, that is why there is a new tribunal called National Green Tribunal. National and Green Tribunal has done a little bit of it, okay, but no, not that all the cases will go to National Green Tribunal. It will take a lot of time. That is why the banker's role come into the picture, because you can say, I will stop investing. No, whether you will go to the jail or not, it doesn't matter to me. I will not invest. Then they will, there's a chance that they will act upon it, because then their business will be hampered. Currently, there is no business case. That is how it is.
Right, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, there is another question again is coming the online, Mr. Shivasai Kumar Reddy. How to mitigate space pollution? Can ozone layer be protected?
Ozone layer is now slightly, we have done quite a bit. There was one program in India that was on, phasing out all the ozone depleting substances from the Indian economy. Okay. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 also has been conducted, and we have more or less replaced all the ODS, this thing with non-ODS materials. The good thing about is non-ODS material, unlike carbon, is not that costly. It is not, there is no, the delta gap between ODS and non-ODS is not that much. It's a different technology, but a less costly technology. That is why that we have taken care of. So ozone is not really the problem as on date. It has advanced quite a bit. Phase 2, 3 has been completed. We'll start phase 4. But we have covered almost 70 to 80% of the industries, and we have replaced ODS with non-ODS. That has happened.
Thank you. Any more question? We can allow last one or two.
Yeah. The question is not pertaining to the Indian subcontinent or Southeast Asian. It's global in nature. As you said, global warming is a global phenomenon. Something happening locally has an impact.
Yeah.
Now coming to the southern hemisphere, so you were talking of this. We have done enough for the ozone layer protection. Now we keep on getting reports every Australian summer that a bigger ozone hole is developing on the South Pole. And one of the major causes for that is said to be the methane gas emissions from the Australian dairy units, huge dairy farms. Madam, is there any action being taken or any kind of stricture on the Australian government to act on this?
No, to be honest, no. Because Australia, they actually tried to implement quite a few regulatory measures in the last 5-6 years. They implemented carbon tax, to reduce any kind of carbon emission or methane emission and all. That failed, and carbon tax failed mainly because it was all boiling down to the consumers. So the idea was not to go for any further taxation, but to go for more direct, measures, like I was talking about emission trading scheme. But Australian emission trading scheme hasn't yet taken place. So the whole I would say the progress has been very, very slow. So Australia has tried a lot of things, okay, but it is not yet there, to be honest.
In fact, the more alarming thing is that two huge ice shelves have broken up from Antarctica, almost the size of state of Delhi and size of Goa.
True.
Now, this is going to have a direct impact on the Gulf Stream currents, on the Labrador currents, affecting the La Nina, El Nina
Because it's all
phenomena.
all connected with each other. You're very right.
So,
But there is no progress in Australia. I mean, we are hoping that there will be another, because they are also working on the emission trading scheme. That is important. You must put pressure on those who are generating the emissions and regulatory pressure. Without any absence of regulation, nothing is going to happen.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes. Any other one last question? With that, we have totally run out of time.
Just one short question.
Please, please.
It's very specific to my country. As Madam mentioned about mitigation and adaptation, maybe if I understand correct, what we do in our country due to this global warming effect, there's a huge risk of glacial lake outburst. And when that glacial lake outburst comes, there's huge risks for people living downstream.
Yeah.
So what we are doing right now is we are doing mitigation. We are going up the lake and draining out that lake little by little. So that was mitigation part. But another challenge we face is landslides, flash floods, which is very unpredictable, sudden. We don't know where it's going to happen. So I was wondering, Madam said adaptation. So we need to be resilient and adapt to it. So what's Madam's advice on adapting to these landslides and flash floods so that we can prevent from damages?
Yeah, you actually can't. The adaptation measure around landslides and for flash flood is mainly relocation, to be honest. Relocation of population and relocation of assets from the. So first of all, we need to draw a pathway. Where can it strike? And also we need to do a pathway separately for the plains and for the mountains, where the occurrence of landslide is much more, right? So from where the flash flood can generate. So three things. One is there are already climate risk assessment models. There are climate models that have been developed by Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. If you apply these models, these are mathematical models, and anyone can buy these models, buy the data, and can apply that for your own geography. So many of the corporates and the banks, what they are doing is they are carrying out climate risk assessment, okay, of different locations, precise locations. Okay, if you give the latitude and longitude, you will understand what is the probability of occurrence of landslide and flash flood in that particular region. So you need to apply such projected models. And what these models do is they predict this based on different scenarios. So one scenario is called representative concentration pathway 8.5. That is the worst possible scenario. And depending on how the global greenhouse gas load will increase, they have mapped out for each and every location of the globe that what is the occurrence of GLOF, flash flood, landslide in a particular region. So you need to apply that to understand the probability of different, hazards in different regions. That's the first thing that we need to do. We need to project better. We have such mapping currently. We don't really have because we do not apply those models. But these models are not very costly models. We just need to know about these models. We need to run these models in those regions. So that's the first adaptation action that we can take, to know what probability is there for different locations. The second is once we know that this is the most high risk area when it comes to landslide, then we need to know that there are several causes of landslides. It's the soil, it's the below crust. What is the the undulation of the land? There are certain data points that we need to collect for those hotspots. The hotspotting is the first thing. Once we know the hotspots, then we need to know the exact soil structure and build of those areas which are predicted as hotspots. Once we collect that, then there we have to rebuild those areas to prevent landslides. Because as I was telling you earlier also, it's the erosion of the soil structure on the surface and below the ground that creates landslides. And we need to rebuild those areas in a manner so that we can prevent landslides. So there has to be certain construction related investments that will have to go into it. But that you can't do everywhere. That is why it's very important that you prioritize the hotspots and do such measures in those areas. So that is the second point of it, that you design the adaptation action as per the hotspotting, that the hotspot mapping that you have done. Now, it's very, very important for us to understand that exact adaptation action will depend on that particular area. I was telling you earlier also, right, that for one district in Madhya Pradesh, it was channelizing the river because the soil was very hard. For the other one, it was digging the pond. You may find that in certain crusts in your country, the soil is very hard, which you cannot maybe rebuild. In certain cases, what you need to do is you might have to relocate your population, which will get affected because of landslide from that area. So relocation, for example, you were talking about Australia, right? What Australia has done is because they are unable to adapt or mitigate, they have relocated large, significant portion of their population from the hotspots to a less risk, prone area. That they have done. Relocation, if we have to study, we can actually study Australia. They have done it well. It's a problem in India because we cannot relocate. There is no place to relocate. But in Nepal and Bhutan, there is still, because in Bhutan at least I was reading and I was talking to the government. It is a relocation from the landslide prone rural areas to the urban areas. This is happening in Bhutan. So relocation is also an adaptation strategy, at least for the time being. So that's the third option when you do not have an option to construct or do construction measures in a manner to prevent landslides. But the first thing is to understand the hotspots and apply the already existing models. There are already existing prediction models. We do not have to invent them. And it's all available. You can Google and find out and get the software and do it.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. And we've totally run out of time. Hope audible. Yeah. So, coming to the last part of it, you put through a lot of light on the whole theme of sustainability. And it's very clear what are the spoilers that we had looked at. So if I were to ask you, we are at a Balbon moment when we talk about sustainability. If I were to ask you, what are the three, spoilers which the government, be it, South Asian countries or India or any country for that matter, has to work on on our footing eventually to further push our sustainability-led initiatives, what would be? That is first. And another part, the very theme itself. Do you think that sustainability is a preferred choice or it will end up as an optional choice? Focus.
Okay, so I'll answer the last part first because that is easy for me to answer. It is definitely Hobson's choice as per the terminology, because we do not really have a choice. I always go back to my son's question: what happens if he lives for 70 years?
Okay.
To that generation. So if I answer that question, it's definitely you do not have options but to be sustainable. But now coming back to the first thing, three spoilers, as I was mentioning, right? We are not we think climate change, sustainability is a long-term thing for us. We are not predicting or hotspotting that he was asking, like, what is my first adaptation action? My first adaptation is to know where the risk lies the most. And that we can do. We have to just run a model which we do not know what raw model to run. And Indian government, Bhutan government, Nepal government, all of us can do this. Understanding, instead of thinking that it is in the future, let's understand the future better. Even if it is in the future, what's going to happen in next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? So that is why a predictive model, if we can use.
Governance, we say that everything is fine, is the first fallacy of governance.
Yes, that's the first fallacy, that we are living in a world which looks fine from the surface, but that is not the case. So let's predict our future better is the first thing which we are not doing currently. Second, I would say the whole aspect around research and development. We always, at least, because we are in the developing nation, we think, like we are a test frequent, we are developing, we have to go, repay our debts, we need to develop, then only we can do something for climate. No. If you do not do for climate now, it is, as I said, if you invest, then it is $30 per ton of CO2 that you have to, that you have to cost. You have to take account of. The other is $100 per ton of CO2. So which one will you choose? $30 per ton of CO2 or $100 per ton of CO2? So that choice, and we need to be very aware of the costs associated with this. That is the second one. And the third one is, I would go by what you mentioned. Sir mentioned about education.
Okay, awareness.
Awareness. Awareness, and it has to be a part of the institutional governance. It's very important that it has to be. I mean, like we need to have. It cannot be like a one-off discussion with one climate change person. It has to be a regular discussion. You need to have one reference point in your organization who will help you understand these subjects better. Institutionalization of ESG as a whole in the organization, in the government. Is the third thing which we are far, far away. We are not doing it. So these are the three, as per my understanding.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Madhura ma'am, for coming on board and then enlightening the audience. I hope definitely there was huge takeaways for the participants who are tuned in online as well as the word of participants here. Huge takeaways. Very dry subject on the one side, but then very, very important subject if you are not to be, still considering it as dry. Okay, so that's the take on it, and so much thankful. I'm obliged to thank each one of the participants who had tuned in, who had participated, both online and offline, and my tech support team who were there throughout. And all the in association with SIDBI, we were running it. So I would like to thank SIDBI for coming on board. Thank our director to give the for having given the welcome address, and my faculty colleagues, Dr. Vijay, Taraknath, and Gopi, and everybody, and the technology team led by Mr. Manoj, who had been in the backside but who are contributing effectively for the success of this. Thank you so much.
I think I must thank all of you because you asked a lot of interesting questions.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so please, the online participants, you can give your feedback about how you felt about the program in the chat box. You can also, we were also on live stream in the YouTube and the Facebook page of SBI. I could see some of the people asking whether we can get the recording of this. It's already available in YouTube, so you can pursue it. You need to just type SBIL and this particular theme. You'll be able to watch that fully. So, and if you in future also, if our cohort of participants wants some such similar and very, very thought-provoking themes to be debated upon, please mention that in the chat box. What could be such themes? So we generally take up such themes as well. So thank you so much once again. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. You can have a
Sure.
just any announcement you need to do for tomorrow, this thing you can tell them. Okay. So any announcement for Ms. Manoj, you can log out other participants. Or the other participants. See any announcement we have already announced. So please look at our group. Okay. So tomorrow 9 o'clock is what we said, right?